Hoorah, we got a Marine out there. God bless you. What do you guys put in the water here in Western PA? This is a hell of a crowd. Thank you, guys. It's great to be here. It's great to be part of VFW Post 92. I've actually got the card right here in my pocket. I'm officially a member, so this is not the last time you're going to see me. I'm going to come back to VFW Post 92, have some pancakes, maybe a cigarette, whatever, right? We'll figure it out then. Let me just say a few things here, and before I do, I want to, please take a seat, please. I think it's appropriate because this is actually the 3-year anniversary of when President Joe Biden got us out of Afghanistan in the most disgraceful way, and of course Kamala Harris was right there every step of the way. And because they tried to shut the airport before they got everybody out, one of the most catastrophic mistakes in the history of the U.S. military, totally unforced error from Kamala Harris, and a total failure of leadership, we lost 13 brave service members that we didn't need to lose, and that was 3 years ago. So before we get started here, I just thought it would be appropriate for us to observe a moment of silence, think about those 13 young Americans who died, and think about their sacrifice. Amen. Thank you all, and thank you all for remembering them. You know, a lot of you know my story of service, and a lot of you don't, so just talk a little bit about my service in the United States Marine Corps, what it meant to me, and how it transformed me. Hoorah, we've got some Marines out there. Of course, we're the loudest and the most obnoxious, of course. That's what we bring to the United States military. I've been traveling around with 4 soldiers and a sailor, and, you know, that's like the beginning of a bad joke, I think. 4 soldiers, a sailor, and a Marine walk into VFW Post 92. Well, let me just say a few things about that service. So I was so fortunate to have the Marine Corps play a transformative role on my entire life. I was in a lot of ways a troubled kid, a directionless kid, and the Marine Corps really changed who I was. Now, the mamaw, the grandmother who raised me, was not excited about me joining the United States Marine Corps, enlisting right out of high school. She loved the Marines, and she was proud of this country and proud of what the Marines fought for. But like a lot of parents and grandparents of a lot of young people, remember this was April of 2003 when I enlisted. We had just invaded Iraq a month before, and she was worried about my safety. And I remember when the Marine Corps recruiter, I believe his name was Staff Sergeant Crafton, he was from the South because he had that real deep Southern accent. Staff Sergeant Crafton came to our house, and my mamaw said, if you step 1 foot on my porch, I will blow it off. And as nervous as I was about going to boot camp, I went to boot camp in September of 2003 in Parris Island. My recruiter said, listen, as tough as those Marine Corps drill instructors are, they've got nothing on that grandma of yours. So I was prepared in many ways for Marine Corps boot camp, but it really did have a transformative effect on my life. And I know that all of us who serve share this common bond of this is our home. This is our family. Our brothers and sisters in arms became like brothers and sisters in our actual families, and we're proud to serve this country. We're grateful for the opportunity to serve, and we don't like anybody who takes that service for granted. Ain't that right? So I think that, you know, the Marines have a lot going for them, and I honor every member of every branch of our armed forces. But the one thing that I think the Marines really do well is we have the best motto. I have a favorite motto of the U.S. military, and of course I'm biased, but Semper Fidelis, always faithful, right? You hear Marines say it all the time, Semper Fi. And to me what it means is that Marines are always faithful to our country and to our brothers and sisters in arms, but it also has another meaning, which is that we always have to be faithful to all of the members of our military who served this country and did so honorably. And you heard Jim Banks talk about this a little bit, and I want to expound upon it because I really do think that Donald Trump exemplifies that motto because his government and under his leadership, the United States was always faithful to the veterans of this country, and that's something for us to be proud of. His record and his vision is a vision of always being faithful to those who put on the uniform. And he didn't just talk about it. It's important, of course, to honor our veterans and to talk about their service. He also put in place real policies that really benefited the veterans who'd served in our military. And I know, look, I love the VA. I received a lot of health care at the VA, especially in the few years after I got out of the Marine Corps. But we also know that sometimes the VA has those long backlogs, right? You spend a little bit too long on the phone. Maybe if you're trying to get a disability claim, it takes a little bit longer. Well, Donald Trump's leadership cut down on those disability backlogs. And when you had veterans who were unable to get health care because sometimes things were just a little too backed up, he promoted veteran choice, especially for our veterans living in rural areas. I happen to think that those who put on a uniform and serve those country, we've got to be always faithful to them. And if they need to see a doctor, we got to promote veterans' choice to give them that ability to see a doctor. Isn't it just that simple? And I think this administration that we have now, Kamala Harris and now Tim Walz has joined the ticket. And by the way, I want to say we've got a great Congressman Waltz here with a T who has not lied about his service. And so everybody who's calling him, complaining about Tim Walz, this is the good Waltz with a T. It's Walz with a Z that we're going to criticize later today. But I want to talk not about Tim Walz right now. I want to talk about what the Harris administration has done to fail these veterans. They've actually tried to cut back on veterans' choice in health care. The disability backlog has gotten worse. Wait times at our VA have gotten worse. The veteran suicide problem is still terrible, and Kamala Harris wants to give Medicare and health benefits to illegal aliens. She wants to give first-class hotel accommodations to our illegal aliens. We've got 300,000 veterans who are homeless in this country right now. Let's take care of them first and leave the illegal aliens to their home countries. Always faithful is not allowing your veterans to sleep on park benches and under bridges while you bring in millions of illegal aliens and put them in the front of the line on health care and lodging in our veterans. And that's exactly what this administration has done. So I just want to make a simple pitch to veterans and to everybody who loves veterans or cares for veterans in this country, but especially here in Western PA. We have got to get back to a presidency that looks after veterans. We've got to get back to a presidency that is always faithful to the service of our veterans. We have got to get back to the presidency of Donald J. Trump. He did it already, and he's going to do it again if we give him another opportunity. Let's take care of our veterans and not leave them. Now, I want to give just a few shout-outs here to some of the veterans we're thrilled to have join us today. And then I want to bring up Pat to speak a little bit about his service record and his incredible sacrifice. But let me just say, first of all, we had a few people speak before me. We have the great Representative Brian Mast, who has sacrificed a lot for this country. Brian, thank you for being here, man. Again, the great Representative Michael Waltz with a T. Thank you for being here, Mike. And, of course, my dear friend, who I believe, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of your family came from Breathitt County, Kentucky, too. The great Representative Jim Banks is going to make the next senator from the state of Indiana. I also wanted to recognize the person who outranks all of us, so we've got to follow your orders here. State Treasurer Stacey Garrity, thanks for being here, Stacey. God bless you, and thank you for your service. She welcomed us and said that she was recently retired, I guess in 2016, so it's been about 8 years now. And then we all said, well, what rank did you get out as? And she said a colonel, and we're like, oh, crap, a full-bird colonel. We got to be disciplined here. We got to take care of ourselves. But thank you, Stacey, for your leadership here in Pennsylvania, but thank you for service as well. We've got a great guy, Brandon Kraft. Where is Brandon? Brandon didn't make it today? Okay. Sorry to hear that. But I want to talk about combat veteran Sean Parnell, who is a dear friend of mine. Let's give it up for Sean Parnell. Sean is the, I hate to say it because he's a soldier. He represents the very best of America's spirit of service and sacrifice. He himself knows what it feels like, I think, to be under constant dishonest media smears, and he serves his country despite it. Sean, I'm proud to have you as a friend. Thank you for everything that you've done for this country, and you're going to keep on doing for the state of Pennsylvania. And finally, I want to introduce Pat Harrigan, who is a great veteran of the United States Army. He was a Green Beret. He is a combat veteran, and he's going to be the next congressman from the state of North Carolina. Pat is just, he's a very, very impressive guy. He's one of the few people who makes me feel short. I think Pat's like 6'6", but a great, great human being, a great servant of this country. He did it already in the United States Army as Green Beret. He's going to do it as a representative from the state of North Carolina. Pat, why don't you come up here and say a few words, man? Let's give it up for Pat Harrigan.
Well, thank you, Senator. And it's great to be here with our veteran family. I walked around a little bit and talked to a few of y'all, and some of you guys haven't served, and that's great. But to those who haven't served and are watching this now, I can appreciate that you might not understand why America's veterans across the political spectrum are standing up to sound the alarm about Tim Walz. I can appreciate how you might look fondly on his 20-plus years of service in the National Guard. And I understand why it can seem like nitpicking when our veteran community reads his words and we scream, "Stolen valor." I get it, and I don't judge it. Without serving and deploying, I might not get it either. But I'm hoping that at the very least, by the time that I sit down here today, you'll understand why we are so passionate in our united voice that Tim Walz is a coward who betrayed his men at their greatest time of need and is not fit to serve the United States of America as Vice President. I want to start by sharing a story from my time in service about leadership. As a young lieutenant, I was called into a senior leader's office, and everybody here knows that's a place you don't want to be. But as he addressed me for the first time, I looked around and took stock of all the hard-earned mementos and memorabilia that were hanging on his wall of his office of a man that had served 20-plus years in the Army. And as he asked me questions, something that was on his desk caught my eye. Sitting there was this simple, nondescript framed picture of a young sergeant fitted in all of his combat gear. And the title at the top of the picture is, "This man pays for my mistakes." And what struck me immediately was that picture was not facing outward as if to show others the picture. Rather, it was facing inwards towards his chair. And I asked him why he had this picture, and he said that it served as a constant reminder of the one and only purpose of his role as a leader. And in that moment, I learned one of my most valuable lessons of leadership, and it was a lesson that served me through my deployments in Afghanistan. I learned that a leader is a servant who places the needs of his men and women above himself. A leader is someone that shows up day in and day out, not thinking about his own goals, but about what is best for those under his command. A leader leads his team into battle from the front, not cowering from the back, or worse yet, quitting altogether. A leader understands that our country has placed its sons and its daughters, its mothers and its fathers, and its brothers and its sisters in his care. When a leader violates this trust, hell hath no fury like the men, women, mothers, and children impacted by that coward. The men and women standing in this VFW today have earned the right to be here. They have deployed to combat on behalf of a grateful nation. We have all served under good leaders and bad ones, and our experience has taught us to quickly spot the difference between the two. This ability to discern the quality of our leaders was earned with our blood, sweat, and tears, and in some cases, the limbs and the lives of our friends. And this is why we are standing here today. As the men, women, and family members who were in Tim Walz's unit have spoken out about his cowardice, the media has done its best to whitewash his errors. It was a misspeak when he said that he had gone to war, that he didn't, in fact, mean to accidentally print the wrong rank on the coins that he distributed, or that he may not have received the final paperwork locking his unit into their upcoming deployment to Iraq before he quit. We believe it is unforgivable to do what Tim Walz did, when, among others, the command sergeant major who replaced him, the mother of one of his unit's fallen soldiers, and the unit's chaplain are calling him a coward. How dare Tim Walz call it simply partisan attacks? And quite frankly, how dare you, the media, dismiss the men and women who actually know Walz's character? That's the thing about men and women who, like Senator Vance, have earned their membership as a veteran of foreign wars. Not one of us, we will not back down when we recognize a bad leader who will harm our brothers and sisters in arms. This is why we stand here today speaking out against Tim Walz. His actions have clearly shown that he does not care about the man who will pay for his mistakes. His own chaplain called him a coward. Think of that, his own chaplain. Tim Walz knew a deployment was coming for the men and women under his care, and he chose to be in the halls of Congress rather than have earned the right to stand here with you and I on this hallowed ground in this VFW. Tim Walz is the kind of person who continues to exaggerate not only up to the line, but well over it when it comes to what he did in the military. So to the media listening, I appreciate that you can simply write off a remark from Tim that included "when I deployed to war" as a misspeak. To those of us standing in this room, that cannot be a misspeak. It's impossible for it to be a misspeak. And I'll tell you why, because those words are sacred to us. But those are the words spoken by a man who chose to let those in his care fight on his behalf. And those are the words of a coward who is trying to hide the truth from the American people. So those of us in this room and in VFWs across America, we aren't going to let him get away with it, are we? We will continue to sound the alarm that Tim Walz cannot and will not be anywhere near leading our military. The only question that remains is whether the media will tell the truth or continue to cower right next to Tim Walz. Thank you all.
Wow. Thank you, Pat. That was incredible. And we're going to take some questions from the reporters in just a few minutes. But let me try to round this out a little bit. You just heard an incredible testimony from Pat. He talked about the people that Tim Walz had served with. And let's just summarize the truth. Tim Walz said that he carried a weapon in war. He never went to war. Tim Walz said that he didn't know his unit was about to deploy to Iraq, when even his own press release at the time said that he knew exactly that. Tim Walz claimed to be a command sergeant major, even had it printed on his challenge coins, and he knew he never achieved that rank. And now, Kamala Harris, showing terrible judgment, has decided that her way out of this political problem is to claim that she and Tim Walz are the victims. I think the victims are the veterans who are having their service disparaged because the guy who wants to be their vice president is lying instead of telling the truth. I think those are the real victims of what Tim Walz has done. Every single person standing with me has sacrificed something for this country. Some of us, like Brian, have sacrificed more than most Americans can possibly fathom. But every single one of us honors every veteran for their service, whether they went to war or not. So long as you did what this country asked you to do, you deserve to be praised for it. You deserve to have what this country promised to you actually given to you. This is not about disparaging anybody's services, including Tim Walz. This is about disparaging the dishonesty and asking Kamala Harris, why are you showing such poor judgment by standing by a guy who insulted our veterans and lied about his service? If Kamala Harris wants to lead this country, if she wants to lead the millions of active and reserve service members and the millions of veterans on top of it, she ought to stand before the media and answer why Tim Walz lied and why she's now trying to say that he's the victim, that we are somehow attacking Tim Walz's service. That's what Kamala Harris says, that we're attacking his honorable service. We're not attacking his honorable service. We're attacking the dishonesty about that service. That is not honorable. That is the height of dishonor, and Tim Walz should not be the Vice President of the United States because of it. God bless you guys. Thank you all. And now, let's take a few questions from the press here. Especially, we'd like to start with the local Pennsylvania press, if we have some. And again, you can ask a question to me or any of my colleagues standing up here. Thank you all.
News is that you've agreed to a debate on October 1st, and you're calling for additional debates. Can you explain what you hope to get out of those additional debates?
Well, it's not really what I hope to get out of these additional debates. It's what the American people deserve to get out of seeing the people who want to be their vice president actually debate. I just, maybe I'm old-fashioned, but as the person who's asking the American people for the awesome honor and responsibility of being their vice president, I think I would have to go before the American people and make the case for why I deserve to have that job. And I think it's disgraceful that Tim Walz and Kamala Harris are running from every media interview, running from every reporter. They refuse to respect the American people enough to stand before them and actually ask them for their vote. So I think we ought to do as many debates as we possibly can. I know the President Trump has invited Kamala Harris to do 3 debates. She's only agreed to 1. Tim Walz, I guess we agreed to do a debate on October 1st, but CNN, not exactly friendly to me, much more left-wing than almost any other media station. CNN wants to do a debate in mid-September. And I said, yes, absolutely, because the American people deserve it. And just one final point about this. Look, the Harris campaign is not running a political campaign. They're trying to produce a movie. She never stands before the American people without a script. She never talks to voters unless a teleprompter is right in the middle of them. This is not a person who we should trust to sit in a private room with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin and the leaders of America's, whether they're adversaries or friends. If you are afraid of a friendly media, and the media has been very friendly to Kamala Harris, then how can we possibly trust you to represent us on the world stage? The answer is we can't, which is why we ought to fire Kamala Harris, not give her a promotion. Ma'am.
I wanted to ask, what rules and stipulations did you advocate for within these debates?
So I'll be honest with you, I first heard about these debates, both of them, yesterday. I imagine my staff was talking to CBS and to CNN before that. We really didn't ask or require much. We just wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to do a real exchange of views. That was my only directive, and I told my staff, agree to whatever we have to agree to, because I think it's important, again, that you stand before the American people and actually ask for their vote, not just pretend it's going to be given to you. Any other local reporters? Sir. Sure.
Kind of people have ever met, I'll add. But it's also a region that, as I learned, has a lot of people who rely on government assistance. We were talking yesterday about how much you don't like handouts. So my question is, under a second Trump administration, what programs could those families expect cut, and what would be done to make sure that they can stay on their feet?
Well, look, I know a lot of people, and I grew up with a lot of people, including in my own family, who had to rely on government assistance from time to time. We don't criticize anybody for actually relying on assistance when they're down on their luck and they need it. What we do criticize is a government that has chosen to provide handouts instead of good job opportunities for American citizens. I think that, because look, fundamentally, and again, I say this having known a lot of people who have required these programs to put food on the table. Fundamentally, if you are depending on the government is always going to be able to control you in a certain way. Whereas if you are depending on a good job and an economy that's growing for everybody, then no one is your master. You are your own master. And I think that's the vision of this country that we should have, is that every single person controls their own destiny, writes their own ticket. But look, you know, you mentioned absolutely, Breathitt County, Kentucky is one of the poorest counties in the entire United States of America. We've seen a lot of economic opportunity decline in places like Breathitt County and places like Western Pennsylvania. Why? Well, for a whole host of stupid policies that our leaders have put in place. I mean, you have a president, Kamala Harris, she's the acting president, I guess, because we all know Joe Biden isn't home. But acting President Kamala Harris, who would rather buy oil and gas from Iran and Russia, tin-pot dictators all over the world, than from energy workers right here in Western PA. Let's buy it from our own people. We got plenty of it in Western Pennsylvania. Let's allow these guys to get it out of the ground. But when you do that and you create economic opportunity for people, you bring down the cost of manufacturing, you make it easier for moms and dads to heat their homes on a cold winter night, you create the kind of prosperity and the kind of independence that we want to create. When you destroy economic opportunity, you fundamentally are creating people who are not able to stand on their own 2 feet. That's not what any of us want. I want everybody to be able to stand on their own 2 feet, but they're not going to be able to do it if Kamala Harris is dedicated to destroying the energy and manufacturing economy of Western Pennsylvania and the whole country. And that's what she's done. Final point I want to say on this is, look, Kamala Harris has fallen in love with the green economy. You hear her talk about it all the time. It's the entire foundation of their economic policy agenda. What did Kamala Harris cast the deciding vote to do? To ship a lot of American tax dollars to buy electric vehicles that are made in China. Why don't we keep American tax dollars here at home? Why don't we build factories here in the United States of America? And if we're going to subsidize anything, let's subsidize the products that are built and made in America, not in communist China. Thank you all. That's right. That's exactly right. You ought to be up here answering questions, sir. Any other PA reporters? Then we'll do a couple nationals too. Yes, sir.
I'm Ryan. Just for a Tribune Review. Just kind of wondering, could you maybe elaborate a little bit more on some of the benefits or policies that would benefit, veterans here, and maybe how that contrasts with your company?
Yeah, well, look, the first and most important thing is we all love the VA here, and 90%, 95% of the people who work at the VA are really good and solid people. But if you have people, and every bunch has a few bad apples, who are not doing their job, who are not responding to veterans' phone calls, you've got to be able to fire those people because they drag down the many good employees at the VA. One of the things, thank you, but one of the things that President Trump did is he made the VA more efficient by empowering the people who were doing the good jobs and disempowering and sometimes firing the people who weren't doing good by our veterans. You've got to do that to make the VA actually function. You can't have any agency that can't serve its own people, and the way to do that is to make sure it has the highest quality people. We want the highest quality people in the VA. We've got a lot of them. We ought to promote them, give them benefits, give them raises. The people who aren't doing their job, they ought to get out and do something else. That's number one. The second thing is look, I was in the Marine Corps from 03 to 07, so I remember when I got out of the Marines, and the VA was my main source of health care for at least a few years. the main complaint that you heard back then from veterans was, we just don't have enough choices, especially if you're in a rural area where the closest hospital is an hour and a half away, the closest VA medical center is an hour and a half away. You got to give those people choice to get health care in their local communities. Donald Trump accomplished that in a big and profound way. He gave veterans choice, and Kamala Harris has been trying to undo it. In fact, Tim Walz, the person she selected because he was a veteran, to say nothing about his service record, Tim Walz actually opposed the legislation that gave veterans more access to health care, more choice in their health care. I think we ought to be giving veterans more choice in their health care, and if we do, that's how we stay faithful to the promises we made to them. Any more local PA? Ma'am.
Hi, Olivia Foster, WTHA News. And speaking with a lot of the veterans in our community, one thing that they tell us is that they are working in minimum wage jobs because
Absolutely.
they need to get their education on the battlefield instead of in a college. How do you plan to address the minimum wage in this country to help avoid wage disparity?
So it's a great question. I think that, again, the best way to promote rising wages among all of our citizens, veteran or not, is we've got to have labor markets that are tight. And one of the reasons why we have so many people scraping by on minimum wage jobs is that Kamala Harris has let in 20 million illegal aliens to undercut the wages of American workers. Get them out of here and give a pay raise to American citizens, not to illegal aliens. But I want to address something, because he touched on something that's really important, which is the education component of this. And as all of us know, I mean, look, I joined right out of high school, and I went to college afterwards, but we have served with a lot of very smart master sergeants and first sergeants and sergeant majors and command sergeant majors. Not Tim Walz, of course. He's not really a command sergeant major. He just pretends to be one on TV. But real people who do not have a college degree and have more real-world experience and more real-world education than anybody who got a four-year, degree in basket weaving from a university. So we actually, I think, need to make it easier for veterans, and President Trump and I have plans to do exactly this, for the education that veterans get on the battlefield in their training to translate to the job market on the civilian world. And we do that. And I think that, one, we stop discriminating against people who didn't go to college, but we actually promote the skills formation, skills recognition in our veterans. That'll help raise their wages more than almost any government program. So why don't we take just a couple more questions, and maybe we can take some from the national folks too. Taylor, just who should I? It's bright out there. It's hard to see everybody's faces. Yep. Oh, here we go.
You said that big corporations say abortion bans are bad for business because, quote, corporations are so desperate for cheap labor that they don't want people with parent children. Do you stand by that sentiment? And if so, what evidence do you have to support that claim?
Well, sometimes the evidence to support it is what people actually say. And look, I really do believe that we have to be more pro-family in this country. And I do think, I mean, look, let me give you personal experience. So my lovely wife is here. There's Usha. Sorry to embarrass you, honey. But isn't she beautiful, guys? You see her at the RNC convention. She did such a good job. But look, my wife is a brilliant litigator. She's a brilliant lawyer. We met in law school, and she's had an incredible career. But I think both of us would say, and I feel comfortable speaking for my wife here, that very often corporate America is not especially friendly to parents with young children, especially young moms with young children. And I think that we have to promote a culture of pro-family thinking and pro-family policy in this country where we see children as as blessings and as resources and not as curses, which is how I think way too many companies and frankly way too many of our leaders in Washington think about our young children. So I would very much like for our young moms and our young dads to be able to have whatever family they want to have, and for them to not feel like it's going to ruin their career or ruin their future. We should be encouraging young moms and dads to bring life into the world, and I think there are a whole host of ways in which we prevent them from doing it, and that's got to change. And I'll do one more, ma'am, maybe right there in the middle. Sure. Look, I find this question so funny because Kamala Harris has let in 20 million illegal aliens, and I'm not criticizing you to be clear, but Kamala Harris has let in and allowed 20 million, it's probably more like 25 or 30 million illegal aliens into this country, and people always say, well, isn't it really difficult logistically to get all these illegal immigrants out of the country? Well, first of all, the first thing you have to do is stop the bleeding, right? Kamala Harris suspended deportations on day one. She stopped Donald Trump's Remain in Mexico policy. If you want to get serious about reducing illegal immigration in this country, is got to stop people from coming in at the record numbers they have been coming in since Kamala Harris became the border czar. So we had to start there, stop the bleeding. The second thing is, okay, well, now that we've gotten illegal immigration as close to zero as physically possible, what are you and President Trump going to do about the 20 million illegal aliens who are here? And I think of it as kind of like somebody asking me, well, that's a really big sandwich. It's 10 times the size of your mouth. How are you possibly going to eat the whole thing? And it's, well, you take the first bite, and then you take the second bite, and then you take the third bite. And that's how you approach the 20 million illegal aliens who are here, is you say, look, you say, let's start with the first million, who are the most violent criminals, who are the most aggressive. Get them out of here first. Prioritize them. And then you see where you are, and you keep on taking bites of the problem until you get illegal immigration to a serviceable point. Now, you ask about using the National Guard. Look, I don't know that you need to use the National Guard, but we are going to use every law enforcement tool at our disposal to get illegal immigration under control. That is the most important promise that we will make on this campaign. We're going to get illegal immigration under control. We're going to make groceries and housing most affordable. And by the way, we have a vision to do it. We actually have the plans, we have the policies to accomplish this stuff. That's a big thing that sets us apart from Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. All right, so that's the last question we'll take. And let me just say a word of gratitude to all of you. Incredible to come here in the middle of the day in Western PA and have such a lively, enthusiastic, and wonderful crowd. I wish I could visit with every single one of you, but let me just say here that you guys, the people in this room, are what make this country great. And there is nothing that we cannot do as a nation. We've got the best workers. We've got the best people. We've got the most beautiful country and the best natural resources. The only thing that we need to unleash America's incredible spirit is to get some leaders who are actually fit to lead this incredible country of ours. You guys are why we do this. God bless you, and thank you for having me. See y'all later. Wow. It is great to be here. Hoorah, we got a Marine out there. God bless you. What do you guys put in the water here in Western PA? This is a hell of a crowd. Thank you guys. It's great to be here.